The stars were quiet, and space was calm, until the day they came. No one saw them coming at first. The telescopes of Earth picked up strange signals from the edge of the solar system, but the patterns were unlike anything humans had ever seen. At first, scientists thought it was a new kind of star activity, a cosmic flare, or maybe even random noise. But then the signals grew stronger, sharper, like a voice calling across the void. Soon, that voice became clear. It was not random. It was a message broadcast on every channel, in every frequency. The voice was deep, commanding, filled with pride. "We are gods," it said. "We have come to rule. Kneel before us, or be destroyed." The world fell silent. Billions of people across Earth watched in fear as their screens flickered with alien words, translated instantly by machines. The message repeated over and over, like thunder rolling across the sky. Panic spread through the cities. Some people prayed, believing that these beings might really be divine. Others shouted that it was a trick, another hostile alien empire trying to scare humanity into submission. But no one knew the truth yet. In orbit, the first images of the intruders appeared. Massive ships drifted out of the darkness, larger than any human vessel ever built. Their hulls glowed with strange lights, their shapes sharp and alien, like blades in the night. They moved with a slow, terrible grace, as if they had all the time in the universe. There was no hurry, no rush. They came not as explorers, but as rulers, confident that no one could resist them. The United Earth government gathered in secret meetings. Military commanders argued with politicians, scientists argued with priests, and fear spread even among leaders. Should humanity resist? Or should they surrender to avoid destruction? Old memories returned. Memories of empires on Earth that demanded worship, kings who called themselves gods, tyrants who demanded obedience. Was this the same story, written again, but on a cosmic stage? The aliens sent another message. This time, it was even more direct. They showed images of other worlds. Worlds already burned. Cities turned to ash. Beings of different races kneeling in chains, their eyes empty with despair. The message was clear. We have done this before. We will do it again. You cannot stop us. Fear grew stronger. For the first time in generations, humanity felt small again. Even though humans had colonized parts of the solar system, built stations on Mars and moons, created ships to travel across the stars, they were still unprepared for this kind of enemy. The intruders called themselves gods, but what kind of gods needed fleets of warships? What kind of gods demanded kneeling and fear? In the shadows of Earth's great cities, whispers began. Refugees from other worlds had arrived long ago, aliens who had escaped the so-called gods. They spoke quietly, warning humans of the truth. They are not gods, one said in a hidden meeting. They are conquerors. They bleed, just like you. But they will not stop until you resist. These words spread among soldiers, pilots, and leaders. But still doubt remained. Could humanity truly fight them? Ordinary people continued their lives in fear. Schools closed, factories shut down, and people stayed in their homes staring at the sky, waiting for the end. Yet even in fear, there was anger. Humanity had faced monsters before. Humanity had survived wars, plagues, disasters. Was this really the end, or just another test? The alien fleet moved closer, crossing the edge of the solar system with frightening speed. Satellites tried to scan them, but their technology was too advanced. Their signals scrambled every attempt. Some scientists whispered that the intruders had the power to break planets, to crush entire fleets with a single strike. The days grew darker. Then, on the seventh day, the final message came. Your time is over. Kneel or burn. The words echoed across every device, every screen, every radio, filling the silence of the world. For a moment, it felt like all hope was lost. Yet, somewhere in the deep void of space, one human warship stirred. It was not large compared to the alien fleet. It was not covered in golden light or strange symbols. It was steel, sharp and quiet, built with human hands and human determination. While the world panicked, that warship moved silently, preparing for the storm to come. And though the aliens claimed to be gods, humanity had a lesson waiting for them. Gods do not bleed. But these ones would. Fear spread across Earth like wildfire. After the first message of the so-called gods, no one could sleep peacefully. Cities that once glowed with lights now sat in darkness as people gathered around screens, waiting for updates. News channels ran the alien broadcast again and again, showing the massive fleet slowly moving closer to the inner planets. The words, "We are gods, kneel or be destroyed," echoed everywhere, like a curse that no one could escape. In homes, families argued. Some said resistance was madness. They believed the alien ships were too powerful, that humanity would be crushed like insects. Others shouted back, saying surrender was worse than death. If these beings truly demanded worship, then life would no longer be free. Fear turned into anger, and anger turned into division. The leaders of Earth faced the same storm. Inside secure chambers deep under the surface, generals, politicians, and scientists gathered. Their faces were pale, their voices tense. Some argued that humanity should surrender and hope for mercy. Others demanded immediate war, insisting that humans had no choice but to fight. But the truth was clear. No one knew the real strength of the alien fleet, and no one knew if resistance had even the slightest chance of success. The gods did not wait long to remind everyone of their power. From deep space, they sent out a display, showing another alien world that had once refused them. It was a beautiful planet, filled with cities and oceans, until their warships arrived. The images were horrifying. Beams of energy cut across the sky, tearing through buildings, oceans boiling under fire. Cities turned into craters of smoke and ash. Then came the survivors, millions forced onto their knees, chains around their arms, faces lifeless. The voice returned. "This is what awaits you." The broadcast froze humanity in silence. Even the bravest hearts trembled. If entire worlds had fallen, what chance did Earth have? For many, hope seemed to die in that moment. Religious groups began to rise, claiming that maybe the gods were real, that resisting them was foolish. Some fell to their knees in prayer, begging for safety, believing obedience was the only answer. Others grew furious, shouting that humans would never kneel. Protests erupted in the streets, people clashing with each other, fear mixing with rage. The world stood on the edge of chaos, unsure of which path to take. But among the noise, whispers spread in the shadows. Refugees from other worlds, aliens who had escaped before their home was destroyed, spoke in secret. They had lived under the rule of the so-called gods, and they carried the truth. "They are not divine," one whispered in a hidden meeting in the underground city of New London. "They're conquerors. They hide behind fear, but they can bleed. They can die." These words passed from one soldier to another, from one pilot to another, until small sparks of courage began to rise. Yet courage was not enough. Humanity's fleets were strong, but limited. Earth had warships, yes, but not on the scale of the intruders. The alien fleet was massive, stretching across the void like a storm of fire. Some wondered if even one human vessel could stand against them. Doubt became the strongest enemy. On Mars, workers abandoned their factories, fearing they would be the first to burn. On Earth's colonies, communication lines filled with desperate voices asking for evacuation. But no evacuation could save everyone. The aliens were too fast, too close, too merciless. In one secret base, a young officer looked at the screen of the alien fleet and whispered, "If they're gods, why do they need ships, weapons, and threats? Real gods would not fear us. Real gods would not need to prove themselves." His words carried across the room. A silence followed, a silence filled with thought. Maybe this was not a hopeless war. Maybe this was only another tyrant's lie, just dressed in golden light and terrible weapons. Yet time was running out. The alien ships had crossed Neptune's orbit, and soon they would pass Saturn. Every day they drew closer, their message repeated endlessly, "Kneel or burn." The clock ticked down to humanity's judgment. Across the globe, Families held each other tightly. Children asked if monsters were coming, and soldiers prepared in silence. Deep inside the hearts of humans was a question no one wanted to ask. Would Earth even exist tomorrow? But not all were broken. In the shadows, far from the public eye, a warship prepared. Unlike the fleets of the alien conquerors, it did not carry banners or symbols of godhood. It was steel forged by human hands, shaped by years of struggle, sacrifice, and hidden work. While the world debated, while leaders argued, while people prayed or panicked, that warship's crew made ready. They spoke little, their eyes sharp with determination. Humanity's history had always been one of resistance. Empires rose and fell, tyrants claimed divine power, kings demanded worship, but in the end, every one of them bled. This time would be no different. The so-called gods were coming. Humanity was afraid. But somewhere deep inside that fear was a spark that would soon ignite. The alien fleet moved with terrible beauty, crossing the darkness of space as if the stars themselves bowed before them. To many, they already looked like gods, their ships glowing with strange light, their formations spread across the void like a wall of fire. Every moment they came closer, every moment their voices grew louder, repeating their command, kneel or burn. On Earth, fear reached its peak. Some leaders wanted to surrender, some wanted to fight, but no decision was made. While they argued, the aliens acted. To prove their words, they turned their eyes on another world. Not Earth, not Mars, but a small colony of another alien race that had tried to resist long ago. The fleet surrounded the planet, their ships moving into position with cold precision. Billions of people on Earth and across human colonies watched the live broadcast. The so-called gods wanted them to see. They wanted fear to fill every heart. The attack began. From orbit, beams of white fire rained down, cutting through clouds and striking cities. Buildings melted like wax, oceans boiled into steam, mountains cracked open under the force of their weapons. The colony screamed in panic, voices flooding across every channel, begging for mercy. But there was no mercy. The invaders destroyed everything with slow cruelty, as if each blast was a message. This is what happens when you defy us. For hours the world burned. The sky turned red, the ground turned black, and the screams turned silent. By the end, nothing was left but ashes and ruins. Then came the final image. Survivors, those who had not been killed, were dragged into chains. Millions of them, broken, wounded, their eyes hollow with despair. The camera zoomed in as they fell to their knees before the towering soldiers of the alien fleet. The voice returned. This is your future if you resist. We are gods. No one defies us and survives. Earth fell silent. Children cried in fear. Families clung together, and even the bravest soldiers felt doubt twist inside their hearts. If the aliens could erase a world in a single day, what chance did humanity have? Protests and riots erupted across cities. Some demanded surrender immediately to avoid destruction. Others shouted back that surrender meant slavery and chains. Streets filled with chaos as humans fought against each other, not against the invaders. This was the power of fear, and the invaders knew it well. But among the chaos, voices of defiance still whispered. Refugees from other races, those who had seen this before, told the truth. They bleed. One alien whispered in a safe house hidden deep in Earth's underground. They can die. We have seen it. They are not gods. They are liars who use fear as their weapon. Yet few listened because fear spoke louder. Humanity's leaders watched in silence, their faces pale, their minds heavy with the question, was resistance even possible? Some suggested negotiation, though they knew the truth. The gods never negotiated. They only demanded obedience. And yet, in the middle of despair, one ship prepared. It was not like the alien fleet, not shining with strange power, not covered in sacred symbols. It was a human warship, forged from steel and fire, designed in secret, armed with the best weapons humans had ever created. Its crew trained in silence, knowing they might be the only ones to stand against the storm. As the alien fleet celebrated their victory over the colony, the human ship moved into position. Still hidden, still silent, but ready. Among its crew, fear was present, but so was something stronger, anger. Humanity had been tested before. Tyrants had risen, claiming to be untouchable. Every empire in history had declared itself eternal. But none lasted. None were gods. And these new invaders, no matter how powerful, would learn the same truth. Still, the challenge was almost impossible. One human ship against an entire alien fleet. Logic said it could not win. Numbers said it could not survive. But history said something else. Humanity had always been underestimated. And that mistake, repeated again and again by enemies, had always been their downfall. The aliens had shown their power. They had burned a world to ash. They had filled humanity with fear. But in doing so, they had also lit a fire that could not be easily put out. On Earth, while billions trembled, one thought began to spread. Maybe the gods were not gods at all. Maybe they could be defeated. The human warship, hidden in the silence of space, waited for its moment. And when the moment came, it would not ask for mercy. It would not kneel. It would show the so-called gods what humanity truly was. Not weak, not broken, but unyielding. And soon, the illusion of godhood would begin to crack. Far from Earth, hidden deep in the shadow of a dead moon, the human warship waited. It had no golden light, no shining symbols of divinity. It was forged of steel and fire, built by hands that remembered struggle and war. Unlike the alien fleet, which moved with the arrogance of self-proclaimed gods, this vessel carried something different, quiet determination. Its name was whispered only among its crew, a name chosen not for glory, but for survival, the Resolute. Inside, the air was tense but steady. The crew spoke little, their eyes sharp, their movements precise. Each one knew what was coming. They had seen the broadcasts of the colony burn to ashes. They had heard the alien voice declaring humanity's doom. Fear lived inside them, yes, but it was controlled, shaped into steel. The captain stood at the center, a figure hardened by years of service, his face calm but unyielding. He did not see himself as a hero, only as a man with no other choice. Around him, officers worked in silence, preparing weapons, checking shields, running simulations. The warship had been built in secret, hidden from the public, designed for a war that many thought would never come. But now, its purpose was clear. It was humanity's blade, forged to strike when all hope seemed lost. As the alien fleet moved closer to Earth, the Resolute came alive. Engines thrummed, weapons charged, systems lit up across the vessel. The silence of the dead moon was broken by the awakening of steel. Outside, the ship remained a shadow, unseen by the invaders. Inside, the crew prepared their hearts for what was ahead. "They think they're gods," the captain said quietly, his voice steady, echoing through the command deck. "But gods do not bleed, and we will make them bleed." His words cut through the tension like fire through ice. Faces that had been grim now held a spark of defiance. The crew knew the odds. One ship against a fleet was madness. But humanity had always thrived in madness. History was filled with impossible battles where humans had refused to bow, where they had stood against overwhelming forces and survived. This would be another chapter in that story. Across Earth, people continued to panic. Leaders still argued in chambers, unable to decide. Some wanted surrender, others wanted to hide, but none had the courage to speak the word fight. They did not know that in the silence of space, one ship had already chosen. The alien fleet did not fear humanity. They moved like predators who believed the prey was already broken. Their arrogance blinded them. They did not search for hidden blades because they thought none existed. That arrogance would cost them. On board the Resolute, final checks completed. Weapons glowed with energy, missiles waited in their bays, and railguns stood ready to fire. The ship's artificial intelligence confirmed every system at peak efficiency. The crew strapped in, each heartbeat heavy with both fear and pride. The moment was coming. The alien fleet had crossed Saturn's orbit, moving toward Jupiter. Soon they would be in range of Earth's defenses, and when that happened, the war would begin. But humanity would not wait for the invaders to strike first. The captain gave the order. Engines flared, and the warship slipped from the shadow of the moon. It moved silently at first, a predator hidden in the void. Then, with a sudden burst of power, it accelerated toward the enemy. The crew felt the ship tremble, the stars streaking across the windows as they moved into the path of giants. In the distance, the alien fleet glowed like a wall of fire. Thousands of eyes on Earth watched from secret channels as the lone human warship revealed itself. Some gasped in horror, believing it was suicide. Others felt hope stir for the first time, hope that humanity would not bow. The aliens noticed. Their laughter echoed across the channels, mocking. One ship? Do you believe this changes anything? We are gods. You are nothing. But the humans did not answer. Words were meaningless now. The only answer would come in fire. The captain's voice was calm as he gave the final command. Prepare for battle. Today we show the truth. The ship's weapons locked onto the nearest alien cruiser. The crew held their breath. This was the moment when fear and courage would collide. The gods had shown their power. Now humanity would show its resolve. And in the cold silence of space, the warship roared to life, ready to strike. The alien fleet stretched across the void like a wall of fire, their ships glowing with strange energy, their weapons already charged as if daring anyone to challenge them. And into that wall moved the lone human warship, the Resolute. It looked small compared to the titans of the so-called gods, a single blade against an army of giants. The aliens laughed through open channels, their voices filled with arrogance. One ship? Is this humanity's answer? Do you believe your toy can stand against us? But the human crew stayed silent. There was no reason to argue with liars. Words would not prove anything. Only battle would. On the command deck, the captain watched calmly as the enemy fleet loomed larger on screens. His voice was steady, almost quiet, but every soul aboard heard the weight of his words. Fire. The warship roared to life. Railguns unleashed bolts of metal at impossible speeds, cutting through the darkness like thunder. Missiles streaked out, each one carrying death forged by human hands. For a moment, the aliens were surprised. Their cruisers turned sharply, shields flashing as human fire struck them. The first shockwave lit the stars, a flare of light brighter than the sun. One alien vessel shuddered, then cracked apart, fire spilling from its wounds. The laughter on the channel stopped. Silence replaced it, a silence filled with disbelief. The so-called gods had been struck. They had been hurt, and they had not expected it. Their arrogance broke for the first time. Then came their fury. The alien fleet opened fire, unleashing a storm of energy beams and plasma bursts that lit up the void like a second dawn. The sky burned with weapons of unimaginable power, all aimed at the single human ship. The Resolute trembled under the impact. Shields glowed bright. Warning alarms screamed across the decks. The crew gritted their teeth, holding their stations as the ship shook with every hit. One officer shouted over the noise, "Shields at 70%. The captain gave no sign of fear. "Hold the line. Return fire." Again the ship roared. Cannons spat steel, missiles tore through the dark, and lasers burned against alien shields. Another cruiser staggered, fire exploding from its engines. Then another. The crew watched with wide eyes as two massive ships of the so-called gods broke apart, their wreckage drifting like broken bones. The impossible was happening. Humanity was fighting back, but the cost was heavy. The alien fleet pressed harder, their fury endless. Beams sliced across the Resolute, tearing armor, shaking the vessel to its core. Sparks rained down inside the decks. Systems overloaded, lights flickered. A young crew member whispered, "How long can we last?" But even as fear filled their voices, their hands did not stop moving. Humanity had chosen to fight, and fight they would. Then something unexpected happened. The survivors of other alien races, watching from hidden channels, saw the gods bleed. Across the galaxy, eyes widened. For the first time in centuries, someone was standing against the false gods and surviving. Whispers spread like wildfire. They can be beaten. Back in the battle, the alien fleet tried to surround the human warship, forming a cage of fire. Dozens of cruisers poured their weapons into the center, determined to crush this single defiant vessel. But the captain saw their plan. Full power to engines. Break through. The ship surged forward, engines blazing brighter than ever. With sudden speed, it cut through the enemy formation like a spear, unleashing every weapon it had. Railgun slugs ripped into the belly of a massive battleship, tearing it apart in an explosion so bright it blinded the stars. The crew of the Resolute shouted with fierce joy as the giant broke apart, its wreckage scattering across the void. Another one down, but the celebration was short. A direct hit slammed into the human warship, shaking it violently. Consoles burst into flames, crew thrown to the ground. A voice cried out, "Hull breach on deck 3. The captain's jaw tightened. They were bleeding, but they would not fall. Seal the breach. Keep firing. And they did. Even as the ship burned, even as alarms screamed, the humans fought with every weapon left. Every shot was precise, every strike a message. We will not kneel. The alien voices returned, but this time there was no laughter. There was rage. You dare challenge gods? You're insects. You will be crushed. But the crew of the Resolute only answered with fire. Another missile found its mark, another cruiser fell apart, and another illusion shattered. Humanity was not an insect. Humanity was the storm. And though the battle still raged, though the warship stood alone against an endless fleet, one truth had already been revealed. The gods could bleed. The battle raged on, fire and light tearing across the void as the lone human warship refused to fall. The alien fleet had expected victory in moments, but instead they were locked in a fight they did not understand. Their arrogance cracked with every explosion, with every cruiser that shattered under human fire. They had called themselves gods, eternal and untouchable, yet now their ships burned and their soldiers screamed. Across the galaxy, eyes watched. Hidden colonies, enslaved worlds, scattered refugees, all saw the impossible. The gods were bleeding. For generations, these conquerors had ruled through fear, showing only their victories, never their losses. But the Resolute had forced their weakness into the light, and once seen, it could not be unseen. Whispers spread faster than light itself. They're not gods, they are only tyrants. On the command deck of the Resolute, the crew fought with fury and exhaustion. Systems flickered, shields cracked, weapons overheated, but still they pressed on. The captain's face was grim, his voice steady even as the ship groaned under fire. "Target the engines," he ordered, and the gunners obeyed. Another alien vessel shuddered, its rear section breaking apart, flames spilling into space before the entire ship erupted into debris. A cheer rose through the crew, but it was short-lived. Warnings screamed across the consoles, red lights flashing. The Resolute was taking heavy damage, its armor breaking, its systems bleeding. Yet no one retreated, no one faltered. They knew what was at stake. Humanity's survival depended on them. But more than that, the galaxy itself was watching. Every shot they fired was not just a weapon. It was a message. The so-called gods howled with rage, their voices breaking through the channels. You dare defy us? You dare humiliate us before the lesser races? We will tear your world apart. Their fury was real, their fear hidden behind their rage. They had never been challenged like this, never been forced to face the truth of their own mortality. And the more they fought, the more desperate they became. Ships that once moved with perfect formation now broke apart, attacking recklessly, trying to crush the human vessel with sheer numbers. But desperation was weakness. The crew of the Resolute exploited every mistake, striking fast and hard. Another alien battleship collapsed under a storm of railgun fire, its explosion rocking the fleet. The illusion of divinity cracked further, fragments falling away like glass. Across Earth, people watched in awe. Panic turned into hope, fear into fury. For the first time since the alien fleet had arrived, humanity believed. They believed the invaders could be beaten, that they were not gods, not eternal, not untouchable. On enslaved worlds, rebellion sparked. Chains were tested, guards were attacked. Whispers of resistance grew louder. The image of a single human warship defying the fleet of gods became a symbol. Tyranny was not unbreakable. And in the hearts of the conquerors, something unfamiliar stirred. Doubt. On their flagship, commanders shouted at each other, their once perfect control breaking apart. Reports flooded in. Cruisers destroyed, battleships crippled, morale collapsing. For centuries they had ruled with terror, but terror no longer worked. The humans had shown the galaxy a truth too powerful to hide. On the Resolute, the crew was exhausted, sweat dripping, hands shaking, but their eyes burned with fire. Another one down. An officer whispered as an alien frigate exploded. The captain nodded. Keep going. We finished this. But even as they fought, the ship screamed with damage. Hull breaches spread, decks burned, and the Resolute itself was bleeding like the enemies it destroyed. The captain knew the cost. He knew the warship could not last forever. But survival was not the goal anymore. The goal was to shatter the illusion. And that goal had already been achieved. The gods had fallen from their throne of fear. Across the stars, their lie lay broken. They were conquerors, not gods. And conquerors could die. The alien fleet began to pull back, their perfect confidence gone, their voices no longer filled with laughter, but with rage and confusion. Some ships even fled, unwilling to face the fire any longer. The captain watched them scatter, his eyes cold. Run, he whispered. Run and tell the galaxy what you've seen. Tell them humanity will never kneel. In that moment, the battle was more than a fight. It was a symbol, a seed planted deep in every mind that had ever feared the so-called gods. The seed of rebellion, the seed of hope. And though the war was far from over, though the Resolute itself was broken and battered, one truth now stood clear across the galaxy. The illusion had shattered. The gods had been exposed. They were nothing more than liars with ships and weapons. And humanity had proven it with fire. The stars burned with wreckage. The battlefield was filled with broken ships, burning engines, and drifting debris of vessels once called divine. The alien fleet had been torn apart, their arrogance shattered, their illusion of godhood broken. Yet one ship still remained. It was larger than the rest, a massive fortress of steel and fire, the flagship of the so-called gods. It stood in the distance like a black mountain against the stars, its size dwarfing even the biggest human stations. This was the heart of their power, the seat of their false divinity. The Resolute, scarred and burning, turned its battered hull toward it. Inside, the crew was exhausted, their bodies bruised, their ship bleeding. Yet their eyes still burned with defiance. They had not come this far to stop now. The captain stared at the image of the flagship on the screen, his jaw tight, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. This is it. Cut off the head, and the body dies. The crew nodded, their fear buried under fire. Every man and woman aboard knew what it meant. This would be the final fight. They might not survive, but if they destroyed the flagship, the gods would fall completely. Across the galaxy, eyes watched. Enslaved worlds prayed for victory. Humans held their breath, and even the conqueror's own subjects whispered doubts. The illusion had cracked, but the final blow was yet to be delivered. The flagship moved, its cannons glowing, its voice filling the channels. You're stubborn insects. You have wounded us, humiliated us, but here your story ends. We are eternal. We are gods. But the words no longer carried the same weight. They sounded desperate, hollow, like an echo of a lie no one believed anymore. The captain answered with steel. No, you're not gods. You're nothing but tyrants. And today you die. The Resolute surged forward, its engines screaming, its weapons blazing once more. Missiles roared into the void, railguns thundered, and beams of light cut across the darkness. The flagship responded with fury. Its cannons unleashed storms of energy, each shot powerful enough to tear mountains apart. The Resolute trembled, its shields collapsing, its hull screaming under the assault. Explosions ripped through the decks, fires spreading, alarms crying out. Still, the crew held their stations, their hands steady even as the ship bled around them. They fired back with everything they had, every weapon, every shell, every last drop of strength. The battle shook the stars. One moment, the Resolute was lost in fire. The next, it struck a blow that ripped open the flagship's outer hull, tearing through its shields with sheer force. The crew roared with hope, their exhaustion forgotten. But the flagship did not fall easily. It pressed forward, its weapons hammering the human vessel again and again. Decks collapsed, corridors burned, and the Resolute groaned as if the ship itself felt pain. An officer cried out, "Hull breach on deck 5." Another shouted, "Weapons down to 30%. The captain's voice remained steady. "Hold the line. Keep firing." And they did. Even broken, even burning, the Resolute struck again and again, each shot a declaration that humanity would not kneel. Across the galaxy, the battle became legend. Billions watched as a single warship fought the heart of an empire. Every strike against the flagship was a strike against fear itself. Then came the moment. A railgun slug, forged of human steel and fired with human rage, tore through the flagship's core. A massive explosion erupted, fire spilling out like blood from a wound. The false gods screamed across the channels. Their voices filled not with power, but with terror. Their divinity was gone, stripped away in the light of fire. The flagship convulsed, its structure collapsing, its power fading. With one last desperate strike it fired, slamming into the Resolute and tearing through its hull. The human ship shook violently, systems failing, flames spreading, the crew thrown from their stations. Yet even in ruin, they did not stop. With the last of its power, the Resolute unleashed a final barrage, missiles and slugs tearing into the broken flagship. The impact was unstoppable. The alien fortress split apart, fire bursting from within, until finally it shattered, exploding in a storm of light that lit the void brighter than any sun. Silence followed. Where once a godlike fleet had ruled, now only wreckage drifted. The flagship was gone, the lie destroyed. Across Earth and across enslaved worlds, cheers erupted, voices rising like thunder. For the first time in centuries, freedom felt real. The captain of the Resolute stood among the smoke and fire of his bridge, his ship broken, but his spirit unbroken. He whispered words that would echo through history. They called themselves gods. But gods do not bleed, and we made them bleed. The galaxy would never forget that day. The day humanity stood against false gods and proved the truth. The day one warship shattered an empire.